Welcome to the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable, where authors from all walks of life come together to discuss the trials, tribulations, and triumphs of publishing their books. I'm Alice Stockton Rossini. Join us here every Saturday night at 8 p.m. or listen to our podcast anytime on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, and PodServe, just to name a few. The Author Roundtable is sponsored by ReaderHouse Online Bookstore, where independent new authors come first. Jack R. Sparacino writes purely for the joy of writing and has brought his Ladies Mafia series under the ReaderHouse umbrella of publishers. The name of his book, Howling at the Moon, The Southern Ladies Mafia Goes Abroad. It took some doing, but I finally got Jack to answer his phone to talk about how he brought these fascinating, if not scary, characters to life.
Well, I've been retired officially since 2006, and I spend my time basically doing whatever the hell I want to.
Good for you.
I like to fish. I've always loved to fish, and I've got lots of friends in the area. And I've got my grown sons that are in Boston, which is nearby, of course. And I've got two girlfriends, one on each coast, that keep me busy, and two little dogs. And here and there, I sit down and write stories.
That's pretty good. So do the two girlfriends know about each other?
Mostly.
That's interesting. I know a guy who does that, and they both know, both of his significant others know, and they're good with it.
Well, here's the thing. I'm 72 now, so probably, grew up a long time before you were around. In the 50s, I was born in New York City, Queens, New York, specifically Boulevard Hospital, which I don't think is there anymore, at about 9 o'clock at night on Veterans Day, before it was actually called Veterans Day. I think it was called Armistice Day back then. And I've lived all over the country. I've lived in 9 states.
Were you in the military?
No, my father was very upwardly mobile when I was growing up. And so that resulted in the move to California, for example, where he headed up the guidance system for the Apollo shot.
Wow.
That was his team. Oh, he was a star. My father was an absolute rocket scientist, international star. And my mother was an artist. And so, as I like to tell people, when you mix up a rocket scientist with an artist, you get something that looks like me.
You get Jack. And what did Jack end up doing?
Me?
Yeah.
Well, I've had 4 careers. Number one was I was sort of a self-styled yet traditional academic, in the sense that after I got my doctorate from the University of Chicago in 1978, I had been teaching part-time to, pay tuition and so forth for a couple of years. Then I went to Ohio State, and I was a full-time academic nerd for 3 years. Drank a lot of beer, went to all the home, you name it, games, football, basketball, hockey. And what was my favorite of those 3? Hockey all the way. Oh, my goodness. I'd just show up and say my name and, oh, here you go, Mr. Sparacino. I got 2 tickets for you right here.
Nice.
Got tired of that after 3 years at Ohio State. I went into market research for a couple of years. So that was the second career. And that's where I met my incredible wife of a lifetime, Jane. Career number 3 was aerospace, and that's where I spent most of my adult life, was working for United Technologies in the Sikorsky Aircraft Division, making helicopters in Stratford, Connecticut.
I know where that is, yeah.
Career number 4 is what I do now, which is that when I feel like it, I sit down and I write.
Well, I love the title of your book, Howling at the Moon, The Southern Ladies Mafia Goes Abroad. What inspired this?
Well, first of all, let's talk about the cover for a second now that you mention it.
Okay.
That young lady is my East Coast girlfriend's niece, who's living in the Dominican Republic. She doesn't speak much English, but she wanted to come up here and marry me or heaven knows what. We couldn't get her through customs, and it was just a living nightmare. And the residual of all that effort was that I had to put her on the cover. Why? Because she looks the part. I mean, she's Latina all the way, hot and spicy. And I said to myself, that's the girl I'm on the cover.
Yeah, she's really pretty.
She's stunning. So anyway, that's my East Coast girlfriend's niece. Now, what I think you were alluding to what got me into writing the Ladies Mafia series. There are 4 books in the series. You're looking at number 3. There's a 4th one that's done that I'm saving for next year.
Okay.
If I live that long, it's very adult. I mean, the 4 books go progressively from almost PG to R to. My West Coast girlfriend says, she says, you write pornography. I said, no, I don't. I write graphic novels. They're not pornographic. They're graphic. There's a big difference. Now, why did I come up with the Southern Ladies Mafia? Well, I'm well read in several areas aside from my home field of psychology. One is U.S. Naval World War II history, and that series of writings that I did over the years is what resulted in my getting the World War II Victory Medal from the Navy. And I get to do whatever the hell I want to. And writing stories, and what got me going was reading about World War II horrors and some related materials. I started getting into crime novels. Michael Connelly is one of my favorite authors. I'm sure you're well familiar with his work, and several others in that genre. And it was all guys, all bad guys. And I'm thinking, you know what? What about let's just stand back a little bit. Let's think about there must be some horrible women out there. I think it was yesterday that school shooting. That was a woman. That's very unusual.
Very for a mass shooter to be a woman.
Almost unheard of. Now, here's the point, my dear. There is this 1 out of 100, and actually it's more like 7 out of 100 statistically. That's the percentage of female inmates in the United States coast to coast. 7%. So they're rare, but they're not unheard of. And so I got the idea of developing a story around a woman that I called Carla Springbean DeAndre, because she was all legs, and that's what they called her when she was a kid. And one thing led to another. I read one story after another, and it just accelerated. And before I knew it, I had a whole book's worth of these stories, followed by another book. Then I switched over to Fulton last year, I guess. And Howling at the Moon was the second one, I think, with them. Second. I've got a third one that's in process. They'll get the 4th Southern Ladies Mafia book next year, and then my West Coast gal and I are doing something entirely separate from all that. Another book.
Do I need to read your first book to read Howling at the Moon, or can these books be picked up, separately, individually?
Oh, it's a good question. I wrote them sort of a left brain, right brain perspective on it. On the one hand, I like to believe, in my own mind at least, that a person can pick up any of the volumes and be fine without having read the prior volumes. That said, the first volume in the series, which was done with Ex Libris, a company that I literally can't stand, and I left them in a fit. The first Southern Ladies Mafia book was done with them, and if you were going to go back in my history, I would only say just read the first 2 or 3 chapters in that book. That sets the stage. That introduces Carla and sets the whole, train wreck motion. And that's what it is. I mean, they go on this rampage essentially to the Caribbean, to Cuba, out to Oklahoma, and everywhere they go, it's carnage. They're robbing banks and they're cutting guys' throats and dumping them off the back of cruise ships, and then they go back to their cabins and they crack open a bottle of $150 champagne, and it's drinks all around.
All righty. Well, how do these women know each other? How many are there?
There are about 6. And
okay.
What happens is Carla is she's the central character throughout all 4 of the volumes. And what I had her do is just sort of one by one pick up some female accomplices, and then later a couple of 2-3 guys as well, based on guys that I knew, and I just sort of fantasized about what would it be like if they were hooked up with Carla. One of Carla's gang is a real person. She's an artist here in Boston, very, very talented. And I met her. I went to a movie a couple of years ago and took a lunch break, went right downstairs, and lo and behold, she was painting a mural upstairs, and we got chatting. She's very, very talented. Also, absolutely lovely to look at, and just sparkles. complete with, she's all splattered with paint and, she's got a rag around her head. And I was enchanted by her, and I got the idea of, why don't I just work her into these stories? And she wound up being Carla's right-hand gal.
Well, what's Carla's motivation? Is she frustrated? Is she angry? What's her deal?
Bored. She's a corporate attorney in Charleston, South Carolina, which is not far from where I lived for many years. I know the area very well. She's with a flagship law firm in Charleston, and she's bored stiff. She's also working for an asshole. And I created him very specifically to set him up for her to take care of him in the mailroom one night, and she does do that. He does not walk out alive.
Well, how does she have these murderous skills?
Partly some side training that she's done on the internet, and she's got connections in the military, and she's just very, very bright, and likes to initiate things. Partly out of boredom. I would say, as a psychologist, I would say she's hyperactive, drop dead pretty, drop dead smart, drop dead talented, and bored stiff. So she just goes out looking for adventure, and it's one thing after another. They start sort of small with small hit jobs, and they're doing Brinks trucks. They're doing banks. They're doing they're overseas. They're dropping people off the back of cruise ships that piss them off. I mean, they're just they're out of control.
Do their victims have anything in common?
No. I tried to make the victims pretty much like regular people. There's no common thread through them. They're just, innocent bystanders, really, whether it's a bank teller that gets shot in the process of them holding up a bank, or some old guy in the back of the boat that saw something that they didn't like, so they just sort of garrote him. They use a lot of garrotes because they're quiet, and sort of snap the guy's head almost off, not quite. And then before he starts bleeding all over the back deck, they sort of nudge him overboard. And then, of course, there were 3 other passengers back there who saw the whole thing. So they got to dispose of those guys too. So they got like 5 or 6 bodies in the water. It's 2:00 in the morning. They go back to their Carla's suite with the champagne, and out comes the cocaine and the champagne, and they just go nuts. It's like, hey, boy, did we have a rock and roll good time.
And nobody's on to them.
No, except me. I'm the only one that's on to them.
All right, so we've got 4 books now. Tell me what the name of your first book is.
All right, the first one is called String Bean Stories.
Okay.
Tales of the Southern Ladies Mafia. That came out a couple of years ago. The second one is called Dancing with the Devil. Okay. And then the third one is the one you're looking at.
Is Howling at the Moon. All right. Now, along the way, have you done anything to market your books?
No, because I don't give a crap about them.
You don't care about selling them?
No, because I don't need the money, and I just, I'm retired. If they sell me in copies, fine. I don't care. I don't need it.
Well, good. I'm glad. I'm glad, but you don't think people should know these sounds great.
Oh, they're terrific. If I do say so myself, and I don't mean to break but by the way, I broke my left arm a couple of weeks ago.
I'm sorry.
And so I can only pat myself on the back with my right arm at this point, which is awkward, as you can imagine, not to mention opening up a jar or trying to do almost anything like getting dressed. It takes an hour doing it one-handed. Try that in your sleep. What was the question?
You don't need the money, so you don't feel the need to promote them. But I'm saying, don't you want people to know that they're out there?
Well, sure. And I don't mean to denigrate this conversation in the slightest. I would be delighted if they started to really sell. Okay. All I'm saying is that from a financial and personal growth point of view, I'm not 25 years old. I don't care. Okay. Now, if you can put your oar in the water and help drive some sales, God bless you.
Okay. Well, I think people are going to find this interview pretty interesting. You're an interesting guy. You've had an interesting life. You should write about your life.
Well, thank you.
That's just the sense I'm getting from you. So
yeah. How old are you, by the way, if you don't mind my asking?
Why? I'm not that much younger than you.
Okay. So you're a grown up.
Yeah. It's not my first time around the block, if you know what I mean. Not my first rodeo.
I got you loud and clear. And in fact, I think I did take them at one point to a rodeo. It didn't go well. I took them to a dude ranch. I took them to a dude ranch, and they're on this hayride out in the middle of nowhere. and they get into this argument with some of the people in the back of the wagon with them about taking a COVID medication or vaccines. And so
Oh.
they get into this battle and they start pulling out needles and start jabbing these people, and they fight back because they don't like it and whatever. And before you know it, they're all dead.
Jeez, Jack. You have some dark humor there, man. Well, listen, have people read your books? Have you gotten feedback? Do people enjoy them?
Very much so.
That have read
Yeah,
them?
very much so. Yeah.
Well, there's something to be said for that. And it's nice to hear from somebody who's just writing for the sheer joy of writing.
That's what I do. I mean, I wrote professionally for forever. I had to write academic stuff for a living. And when I was in corporate America, I wrote stuff relentlessly. Once they find somebody in corporate America that knows how to put a sentence together, boy, you get every assignment.
Yeah.
Do this proposal. How about this presentation? Yada, yada. It never ends. Now I get to do it for fun. What a concept.
Yeah.
Doing it for fun.
Life is short. You should have fun.
Yeah.
All right. Jack, this was great. You were worth every minute.
So were you.
I was like, where is this guy? Why isn't he picking up the phone? What is going on? Now I know.
He's a mystery man.
He's a mystery guy.
Why don't you do
All
this? Keep me posted on your schedule in terms of what you're either contemplating or have done, or if you want to bounce something off me or whatever.
Okay.
Sound fair?
Sounds great, Jack. Thanks so much.
You go out and do good things.
All right, you too. Have a great day.
You too.
Bye-bye. I think it's safe to say Richard Szymanski is a genius. First of all, he's a Navy veteran, and he's written a book entitled Astronauts' Wives' Recipes. Recipes from out of this world. We'll get to how he managed to befriend astronauts' wives in a minute. But this guy has done so many interesting things in his life, including starting a company called Hybrid Environmental Tech, creating eco-friendly cleaning products. Tell me about that.
Well, it took me a year going through EPA and all that kind of stuff. It's highly proprietary, and I was doing it more for a lot of the military that has problems breathing and things like that. And we don't have any vapor coming from it, so there's no smell. And when I tested it with them, they just thought that was the greatest thing that I could have done for them.
Well, I can relate to that. The smell of cleaning products can be pretty severe. But then you wound up revolutionizing, literally revolutionizing the printing and publishing industry.
I was the founder of my company called Metrographics, and this is in Chicago, okay? And I pioneered the use of computers for the printing and publishing industry, and earned a national reputation, the knowledge of computerized typesetting. We didn't have cell phones and all that kind of stuff. So I thought it was a good idea to use computers instead of California job case lettering and all that kind of stuff.
Well, thank you for that. And then came World Book Encyclopedia Science Service, which led you to getting to know astronauts and their wives, right?
I got involved and became the president and technical director for World Book Encyclopedia Science Service.
Okay.
That's what I called it. And not only, supervising and participating in NASA, everybody was excited about it. When Kennedy said we're going to the moon, and everything started. So I wanted to do the photo coverage and got involved with all the manned space launches and got to know astronauts. And we used photography that... Matter of fact, we had the setups over there in the swamps. We probably had 10 cameras in the water out there, and I was I was the closest to the launch that you can get, right in front of the VIP stand, and I had that all set up. And when the rockets are going, they see the flame, and each camera had we called elephant ears, which we can do 75 pictures, and not only that, track them. Our setup was better than yesterday graphics, but it was exciting. And in between, you have conversations with some of the other astronauts, the ones going on flight. Don't forget they're in quarantine for 2 weeks before they suit up and walk out. And
that's how you got to know the astronauts' wives. And then when the astronauts were in space, you were able to visit them and get to know them, and that's how you wound up with a treasure trove of recipes.
Yes, and it over a long time,
Yeah.
Between flights. And once a flight is finished, I'm back in my office and starting all over again, because I had some of the responsibilities of working with our government over there for the VIP things, So there was a lot of excitement.
Richard, you could write a book just about what you did for a living. Okay, so let's get back to the recipes, because you have had some life. What did you find interesting about these recipes?
One of the first astronaut wives, I think this was Mitchell's wife, I was at her place.
Edgar Mitchell.
In her house. And we were walking around and all that kind of stuff. And outside there was bromeliads, on the sidewalls and all that kind of stuff. And she said, "This is our sanctuary. This is where it's nice and quiet. We cannot be out there." And I said, "By the way, what would be your husband's food that he likes?" Or, and that started it, and anyway, I ended up getting it from all the wives. When the astronauts come home, they're not away for months and months. You're right there by the NASA and all that, and at that time, nobody can, no civilians can go. You had to have a pass and all that kind of stuff, because a lot of secret stuff was going in there. So we were able to do it, and I was privy to go and talk to the wives, and a lot of them, during one flight, the wives of 3 or 4 of the astronauts would get together and so on and so forth, and they were telling me stories about when the boys all came in, unannounced, and this is what they would make and all that kind of stuff. And
did you include some of the wives' stories and memories of their husbands in with the recipes?
Well, little stories, but mostly they gave little ones ourselves. It says, I just opened a page, this recipe, and she would write, this recipe was a wedding present from a friend of Bill's mother, and that's Anders. Is particularly good for the men because it's so moist, and they like cake that way. So this is my own special recipe. I seldom give it out except to friends. And there's a lot of that in there, which is kind of nice, and campfire coffee. And this is John Glenn, John's specialty is cooking out on the patio grill, and they do it a lot. He grills chicken and broils steak and makes shish kebabs. And anytime he's doing that, they finish the meal with campfire coffee, a recipe he invented himself and used with their big old beat-up coffee pot, which looks like something a prospector would carry. John's other long suit is getting up early and broiling grapefruit halves with brown sugar on top for breakfast. He loves to cook pancakes, flipping them as high in the air as he can. Once in a while he misses and dumps one on the floor. The kids have loved to watch his performance even since they were small, and it's often done on Sundays and holidays. See, so I have some of that in there,
Right,
in
right, right,
most of
right.
them.
This is
So,
great. What a fun book. What a fun time you must have had, Richard.
oh yeah, yeah. Here's another one.
Okay.
When I was inside the house of Scott and Warden. And by the way, they had all wives, but Warden was he wasn't married, but his girlfriend was Yvette Menu, the French actress.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I was in the house and very cordial, very soft spoken, and very they always made it very comfortable for me. And I respected, a lot of things that they would say. But at the end, she says, "My cat had kittens, little Siamese kittens." And I says, "Wow, that's pretty nice." She says, "I want you to have one." I said, "Oh my God, I got a dog at home." He said, "No, I want you to have it." It was the cutest, Siamese cat, and I couldn't say no.
Right.
Let's put it that way.
Right.
So I came home with it. I named it Apollo, by the way.
There you go.
And anyway, my wife put drapes, brand new drapes, very expensive stuff, and we were sitting there, and a cat, and this was still a kitten, ran and climbed up that curtain, all the way to the valance up there, and my wife looked up at that, and she says, "The cat's got to go." I said, "But his name is Apollo." She says, "Oh, come on," because we had a dog anyway. So I called just one person, and boom, they took it.
Aw. Now, is that story in the book? No, right?
No.
Oh.
Yeah, it was fun doing it. There's a lot of it in there. If you remember 13, it was really critical because they were losing oxygen and all that kind of stuff. And normally, each wife of the astronauts on that flight get together, and one would be in stress and wants to sleep and get up and got 3 kids and all that. So they come in there also, and work together and calm it down and say, "Don't worry about the kids. I'll take care of them here." They stay in the house because they hear exactly what's going on too. Right from command post, they get all that information. So they would say, "Well, just maybe you want some coffee, or maybe you just want to rest. You go up. We can take care of the kids and do that." They do that.
Right. They help each other.
And every flight they get together, the wives of the astronauts. So don't forget, they, when they're gone to Cocoa Beach or Cape Kennedy or whatever, they go very early because they have to be in quarantine. I tell you that. So they're gone then. So they're like sisters when they get together, and they're all in the same boat, with the flight. I even made some pictures of that flight, with Mitchell and Scott, with his dog, kids playing with a sprinkler in the yard, and the dog, how they jump up and snap at it and all that kind of stuff.
Right. Are these pictures in the book? Do you have some great pictures in the book?
No, I didn't put those kind of pictures in there. And it was big, one of the other astronauts, Hennies, asked me to do that because he was going to load the flight plans, and he wanted to put it into the flight plans when they take off. I couldn't tell anybody about it, but sometimes during the flight, they mentioned something like that, and I have to say I don't know anything, because it come to me because we had such a good operation there. So his flight, the wives, and the one that gave me the kitten, they put the pictures on the moon for them to be there forever because no atmosphere and all that kind of stuff.
Well, Richard, you've done a nice thing for these astronauts' wives. You were a good friend to them.
Yeah, it was individually done.
You should keep writing.
I will.
And hang in there.
I'd like to talk to you a little bit later or
Okay.
something, because
All right, Richard.
you won't believe what I've gone through, and it's been a pleasure. And the thing I'm doing is even on the sale of this book, I'm donating a pretty big part to the veterans here. They're so good, and I've been messing with them anyway, because I want to do something. The reason why I did this book is for that reason, so that I make a mark in this world, going out, something that people can remember.
You've done a lot. You hang in there, all right?
I will, and it's such a pleasure talking with you. And anytime you want to, I'm here.
All right, Richard. Thanks. You have a great day.
And thank you so much.
D. Fuller Smith has written 3 books, but The Disciples is his first through the ReaderHouse family of publishers. And you're doing things a little different this time, right?
I'm just a little older, and I'm doing a little more thorough process of it. I never even thought the first time to have an interview like this, if just how naive I was. I thought I would make a book, everyone will read it, and then I'd be rich. And the middle step didn't happen.
Bummer. A lot of people think that.
Yeah. They let me down.
It takes a little work, right? You got to put something into it there.
There's just so much talent out there. To stand out means you're really talented. So yeah, it's a process.
It's definitely a process. So what was the inspiration for this book?
I love movies. I love just storytelling. My favorite ones are gangster stories. So I didn't know a lot about that stuff other than movies. But when I went to school at Saguaro in Tucson here, we had kind of a drug trade on the side of our school. It just was kind of there. And if you wanted the drugs, you can go and get them. And no one ever stopped it, And so like stuff like that, you just think about and you mull, and I just put together stories. And I guess the basic inspiration was I wanted to have a story about brothers going in different directions, and that was kind of the core. Was the Anslaw brothers, and then I actually built a whole story about Carmine based off of that night when the one died and the one lived, and so it was I had the idea after Pulp Fiction, the dialogue in Pulp Fiction in '94,
right.
Really kind of said I can write like that. That he Tarantino gave a real nice template of how you write dialogue around a plot, because he kind of showed me that a plot's really important, but you can't push a story with just a plot. You got to have good characters and good dialogue, and that dialogue in Pulp Fiction was just so amazing and just mesmerizing. I was actually on a date, and it was funny because we would make out a little bit, and then I would actually watch the movie, and it was my first conflict, I guess.
So tell me about these characters.
Sam has a mother that loves him and no father. Carmine has a father who was beaten down by the world and no mother. So Carmine became much more mature than Sam because Sam was kind of babied. And Carmine also had a moral situation where he could do things and justify them that would be hurtful to others. And what happened was basically they live in a town run by a man named Samuel Luscious, and he just is a very, very old demon, very about 2,000 years old, and he just runs a town. He just kind of owns it, and that's a deeper story about just how our society is run by these figureheads that, we have these human concepts of age and whatnot, but what if we run our anyway? So he notices Carmine. He sends one of his minions and gets an idea in Carmine's head, and Carmine creates what was on the side of a school drug trade into a business, and within 5 years he's running the whole town as kind of a shadow of the main man who's running it, and they get everything they want.
Can you tell me how these two know each other?
High school. They're just high school buds. They just went to school together. They both sold drugs together. They the one not having a dad and one not having a mom, they kind of completed their family unit separately, and so they had a real bond.
And they were both always involved in the drug trade?
Yeah, they were smoking pot as freshmen, and they would sell a little bit there, and then by the time they were juniors, they were making money, And then by their senior year, they were running the whole drug trade there at the school. And then they just continued that.
And you're the guy that you're talking about that's running the town. Is he running the drug trade in town, or is he an authority figure?
Yeah, he would be running the police and running the politicians. And one of the things I was talking about power is you get so old and you've been in power for so long, you get bored. And so one thing that's kind of exciting is maybe corrupting youth.
So when you were talking about the guy in control at this town, he's not like some kind of supernatural figure. He's just been in power a really long time.
The way I constructed it, and I do this through exposition, through a conversation he has, he was actually born before Jesus. So he's literally about 2,000 years old in our years. So what happened is somewhere along the line, he was corrupted by an evil entity that just gave him, like we use the word like immortality, but at the end of the day, if you just live to be 200 years, that's a really long time. So you might feel it. So I just kind of examining that, just what would happen if someone sold their soul to Satan so long ago, and that they just were around forever, just around, and just kind of had that based on that decision, where would they go? So it's a real examination of, I guess I just look at our world today, and it's why is there so much evil, and then you start kind of just backtracking. How could it be? And you always take a macro idea, and once you get to a micro, it becomes concept of a person, of an idea, of an institution, and it was just fascinating, just kind of work backwards like that. And again, this character I'm talking about, he's part of a council of many entities like him that are very old and have been around a long time on this planet that just are the reason why we're run the way we are.
Wow.
Religion came along to maybe fight that again in the concept, but religion is a belief, whereas these are actual physical manifestations that you have to fight. So it's I've written stories about this too, where they've had meetings and the boarding comes in, they play games, or they'll take I have a concept of a planet where there's heaven and hell and whatnot, and they'll take heathens from hell and put them on earth for the amusement of the people in heaven. And I guess one thing that really affects me is the fact that we say we're good, yet we do bad things, and I just can't get over that conflict. And
well, okay, tell me how these two drug dealers then are involved with this. Now, are the two drug dealers also supernatural, or are they just normal?
No, they're regular kids, but since they're under this man's tutelage, the cops don't bother them. They actually have a bad plan to go out and bully the other dealers to make them stop, and then they get fights and then they get hurt, and they end up, their idea ends up working because the other dealers stop. Instead of them having to earn it, it's given to them. But they don't know that, so they eventually get what they want, and it feels like they earned it, and they talk about like they've earned it, but they were always under the influence of the higher power. And I use the word the disciples because I do create him as a Jesus type figure, a leader, and then his disciples are the drug dealers, and then they recruit disciples. And it was kind of a reverse, not reverse Christianity, but a reverse Trinity, power Trinity of the Holy Trinity.
The Father, Son, and the Holy Ghost.
Right. Yeah, just perverting that to evil.
Okay. Now this sounds like the disciples. It sounds like just the beginning. It sounds like we're just getting started in this book.
Yeah.
So what happens to these guys? Where do you leave us?
Well, so the end of the disciples is a micro story where it ends with just those characters pretty much losing everything, and the only thing they have left is money and power, and just that dichotomy where how much does money and power really mean if you really have nothing else? And it's just that. And then the bigger story is that we're part of just a vast universe, and we always had this concept that if aliens were to come here, they would take us over. So taking that concept, an alien race could come here, preach the Bible to us, kind of sedate us, confuse us, overwhelm us. And so once that happens, that will leave Samuel Luscious the ability to have his army of demons rise up and overtake them. So I like that twist, because we always think that we're kind of sitting ducks here. But again, what if we're just laying a trap for an alien race? So then they take over, and then the way it would end was the actual good people on Earth would nuke the planet, and we'd live underground for a very long time, as the surface would be covered with just the remnants of aliens and demons and nuclear fallout. And
so we would all the humanoids would be living beneath the Earth.
If we were to survive, we wouldn't be able to go on the surface. And so that's the science fiction stuff I like to write about. How do you create a society where you understand something bad is going to happen and you're going to have to live underground? And, that process fascinates me and interests me. So I could write a story about that unto itself, and then again be part of the bigger one. But I like the idea of just being part of something so grand and big, and our religion explains part of it, and aliens explain part of it, and then at the end, nuclear weapons explain part of it as well. When you live somewhere where you can destroy it, it's a very earth-shattering, pun intended, kind of feeling.
It is, because we could destroy the Earth very easily right now. We have the power to do that. Yeah,
it's very fragile, and then again, we have people making decisions about these things, and God forbid they make a bad decision, we could never recover from it.
That is true. You raise a lot of... Boy, I wouldn't want to read this before I go to bed at night.
It's a grabber.
Yeah, since this is what you're doing, this is what you intend to do full time, do you have a plan, some kind of a marketing plan?
Yeah, you're part of my plan. I'm figuring out... I'm my own representative right now, so one thing I do need is an agent. So I'm talking to you, and I got a review from Literary Titan. I just sent a book to a couple of contests, and I'm going to bite the bullet and probably spend a couple $1,000 to promote on the radio and just get the word out there. And just basically, if I can get an agent doing everything I'm doing right now, that'll be a huge step. And then at that point, I'll probably go get a book deal. And then at that point, I'll be writing every day and being paid for it.
If I can offer a suggestion,
I'm listening.
Why don't you? Could you try to get a book signing at your local Barnes and Noble, or
I've done those, and my personality type is not good for that, because the in-person rejection does hit me in a way. I got some OCD, ADD kind of things. I think I'm a little autistic as well, so the literal looking at rejection does really affect me in a way that I can't do. So I would love to do a book signing where people know who I am and I can talk about it. Like I'm really enjoying talking about my book with you right now. So I know I can do it. I've been through the book signings where you're looking at people and they just don't even talk to you. And
you had a book signing, and what happened?
I'd done a couple for The Stigma back in 2004. I sat with my wife at Borders at Park Place, and no one really talked to me for about a half hour, and we left. I did another one at Barnes & Noble, and I did sell some there, and so that was nice. Like,
did you invite people to come?
No, I didn't know how to do that stuff. I'm learning right now, so I can do it better now. So that's a good point. I might do it better, because I do on the front end kind of prevent myself because I don't want to feel stuff on the back end. But that's a good point. The way you said that is, I understand what you're saying there.
Yeah, if you invite people, invite friends, invite family, ask them to bring somebody with them for the purpose of you not just talking about your book, but your process and where you got the inspiration, just the kinds of questions I'm asking you, because people,
I like that idea.
They find that interesting. Like where these characters that you created.
I find it interesting. So yeah, that should translate. Absolutely.
Yeah. These characters you created, are they based on people you know? Are they based on experiences you had? What's your process? When do you write? Do you get up early in the morning? When do ideas come to you? I've had people say to me, I just sit down and the dialogue just comes through my fingers. I mean, I've had people say amazing, like, okay.
Yeah,
but that's interesting. And you certainly want to surround yourself with people who are going to like you and support you. Not
yes.
Don't do that. Don't do that to yourself. Don't, people who aren't going to like you. That's terrible.
Yeah, don't waste time trying to win them over.
No. And then, just start where you are before you start spending money and trying to get an agent. Just see what you can do right where you are. And then, one step at a time. D. Fuller Smith.
Absolutely. No, yeah, very good. Yeah, I agree with that.
I'm looking forward to your next book.
I really, really like to have a book deal. Like if I had a book deal, I could justify working on that. But right now I really can't because I'm not being paid, and I'm literally just doing something that I should be paid to be doing because it's actual work, and it's an editing process of work, if that makes sense.
It is, but I mean, if you're waiting for that, I just be very careful. It's a very difficult industry you're in. It's like trying to be an actor. It's like you got to go to a million auditions. You have to be rejected 100,000 times, unless you're Matthew McConaughey, who just kind of slid right into it, right? You're not Stephen King, but somebody may need to find you. Do it for the love. Do it because you really want to do it, and just kind of take it one step at a time, so you don't get your hopes up.
It's an exciting hobby, and the prospect of it being a job is really enticing.
Of course.
So I'm really hoping. I have a certificate for a 2-year degree, and once I finish my Spanish class, I'll have a 2-year degree, so I'll be able to actually get a better job in customer service. So I am kind of a dreamer, so I didn't really get my education the way I should have, thinking I would, write the books and whatnot. So, well,
you know what? You never know what's going to happen until you put it out there, and you're not dead yet. So just keep on keeping on. All right? It's
been fun. It's been a fun effort.
Good. Well, that's the point, right? Life is short. You should enjoy it.
That's right.
All right. Listen, I had a great time talking to you. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you. You were great. I appreciate your advice, and it's really good advice. And I thank you for taking the time to say that.
I do what I can. All right. We hope you enjoyed this edition of the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable, where authors from all walks of life come together to discuss the trials, tribulations, and triumphs of publishing their books. I'm Alice Stockton Rossini. We hope to see you back here every Saturday night at 8 o'clock, or listen to our podcast anytime you want on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, and PodServe. The Author Roundtable is sponsored by ReaderHouse Online Bookstore, where independent new authors come first.